To talk about the fight over that rescue package, I want to bring in Jeff Stein, White House economics reporter for the Washington Post, Liam Donovan, who's a Republican strategist and commentator. And Liam, I want to start with you because you and I have been corresponding about this, and I've been watching you talk about it. And, you know, taking aside the substantive case for rescue, which I think is very strong and we'll get to, just from a pure political strategy deal-making case, how has the president played this situation?
I think it's fair to say he's played it poorly. I mean, I think we know from where Speaker Pelosi came in with her original deal, there was a very kind of meaty middle there where you could see them meeting, kind of halfway with a sizable package in terms of the number. And the issue was, for the CARES Act back in March, the stars aligned in a way where there was just profound fear in the marketplace. The Republicans didn't have any choice but to get behind something. But I think for a subsequent bill, it was going to take some leadership. Republicans are who they are. They're kind of confined in their ideological spaces, and it was going to take presidential leadership to get them to where they needed to go. And in the leadership vacuum, the apathy and ambivalence that the White House projected, they kind of scattered and followed their own individual interests. And that's led us to today, where the president wakes up 25 days from political peril and is trying belatedly to engage on a package that at this point won't even save him or his colleagues. So it has not been the art of the deal. I'm not quite sure where it goes. Maybe Jeff can tell us where our checks are, but it has not been played very well so far.
Well, that point about the 25 days, I mean, I think it relates a bit, Jeff, to the sort of strategy here and the strategy and the substance. I mean, the way that I've read this from Democrats I've talked to is there's always a bit of cross pressure, which is that they really wanted a big package because they genuinely care about this money getting out to people that desperately need it, A. And B, there's lots of local governments and public sector workers who are going to be imperiled. At the same time, they recognize that passing a package like this, say, 2 months ago, would probably help the economy in the run-up to the president's reelection, and that might have political bad consequences. They're now in a position where they might be able to drag this across the finish line and not have to pay the political consequences. How do you see it right now?
I think it's worth noting that there really is a chance that a lot of this money still gets out to people pretty quickly. There was a lot of skepticism, including from myself, when the CARES Act was passed in March, about how quickly they could get those stimulus checks out. But you look at it, they really got 80 million checks out in about 2 weeks. So if they pass something very quickly, which again is looking very unlikely, that could reach people in time for the election. I would say, you know, the human stakes here are enormous. The consequences for the country, the consequences for tens of millions of unemployed people, the consequences for millions of small businesses and restaurants and hotel workers, airline workers. This is not an idle matter. If Pelosi lets this deal go, a lot of people will blame the White House, and rightly so, because of how long they've dawdled. But if that could mean that there's no action until after the lame duck, and we're looking at 3 months of an economic downturn, a spike in cases, and really the likes of which we haven't seen, since March and April. So very, very scary moment for the American economy. And if we let politics get in the way, a lot of people are going to get really hurt.
Yeah, I just to editorialize for a moment, I think that they should make a deal. I mean, I think they should take the deal basically at this point. I think that the substantive stakes are just too high. And you interviewed a dairy farmer from Michigan. I thought it was very interesting, Jeff, because it was kind of a mirror image of some of the kind of diner interviews we saw in 2016 about, trade deals or the fact that the recovery under Obama and Biden was too slow. And this was someone who had voted for Trump, was in pretty bad shape and pretty frustrated. Tell me about that interview.
This is a guy, Randy Massault, really nice guy. And he, was a lifelong Democrat who had felt abandoned by both parties. There was, obviously a decline in worker incomes for 40 years, even at the end of the Obama administration. That was not really addressed. And in farm country, there's a long-running crisis among the dairy farmers that has been, since been exacerbated by Trump's trade war. Massault voted for Trump in 2016, in part because he felt neither party had really cared, and he saw Trump as upending both parties. But now he's not sure who he's going to vote for. He doesn't really think Democrats care about rural America. But at the same time, the trade war has helped drive him and his 5-generation family farm out of business. Quite tragically, his son committed suicide in the middle of the crisis over his farm. And we're seeing the president trying to counteract the negative implications of a number of his sort of chaotic policies by throwing money at it. And you see, a lot of people say the president mismanaged the virus. It caused a huge problem in the economy. He's trying to rush money out the door as fast as possible. He's fallen far short of honoring his promises to rein in prescription drug costs. The president, as you mentioned, has this idea to send $200 coupons, which I think a lot of people say is sort of chintzy and not really addressing the underlying problem. There's this frenetic rush, farmers, seniors, money for Puerto Rico that is, from what we can tell, in part intended to alleviate the president's poor polling numbers with Latinos in Florida. And the thing is that going to be enough to compensate 4 years of chaos? And it seems like very possibly the answer is no.
And there's also Liam, the dynamic here that's been set up between McConnell and Trump is pretty fascinating insofar as if this were to pass, it would be McConnell bringing it to a vote and getting maybe, 15 Republican senators to vote for it, maybe 20, and pass it with all the Democrats. I don't think McConnell wants to take it up. I don't think he wants a deal at this point, and it may end up with a sort of showdown between Republican senators and the Republican president.
Look, I think Leader McConnell's approach to this all along has been, this has not been the CARES Act came together because I think they followed McConnell's strategy. I think the idea of walking into a room with a blank sheet of paper between Pelosi and Mnuchin was probably not the approach the leader would have taken. But at this juncture, I think there's just not really a lot of a legislative window to get this done, and it would be to the exclusion potentially of the other priorities that the party has. And so, I think if the president is willing to put in the kind of attention span required, the kind of effort required to twist those arms and get those votes that you just mentioned, I think the leader would be open to it. But as he said, I think it's very unlikely that can get done. The Senate's not even back until the 19th. And so it's just really tough to figure out how this gets done in the immediate future. And as Jeff says, it's really important and it has to get done. But when you wait this long, it's just not, this is not the way to do business.
Yeah, the country is going to be in even worse shape. It's in terrible shape now. It reminds me of the last time a Republican president was president, but it's in terrible shape now, and it's going to be in worse shape pretty soon. Jeff Stein and Liam Donovan, thank you both. Coming up, new details.